Rumble has come and gone, and we are now officially on the road to WrestleMania. What's going on, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider back with a new edition of Tights and Turnbuckles. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Make sure you hit your subscribe button as well as your bell notification to get notified whenever we upload a video. And make sure you follow us on all of our social medias. That would be Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok, along with YouTube. But all of you that are returning, you know how this works. We come into the show and we do my favorite thing in the world, which is talk about pro wrestling. And this week, it was all about the Royal Rumble match, and the Royal Rumble pay-per-view event as a whole had a lot of attention going on behind it, both behind the scenes as well as what we would see on camera at the event itself. And let's go ahead and get some of the news items out of the way so that we can spend the majority of the time talking about the Royal Rumble as well as a little bit of AEW. Backstage, we saw that Triple H has been announced as the first inductee to the 2025 Hall of Fame class. And I believe this wholeheartedly. And I've seen a lot of people pretty much echo this exact same sentiment. This Hall of Fame induction is very much earned. Triple H, in my opinion, just within the last 10 years alone, with him being behind the scenes and seeing what he did with NXT back when it started off and seeing what it has become. Of course, I'm not talking about the game show version of NXT, his version of NXT taking place from Full Sail. I pretty much knew at that point that this guy was going to be a success when it came towards the backstage stuff and content creating and Booker Styles, all that. I knew that that was going to be his wheelhouse when he got the opportunity on the main roster. And sure enough, it has come to fruition. Not everything is grand, just like everything wasn't always aces with NXT, but the majority of what he has done has been superb. Then we just look at his in-ring acumen, the list of names that he has fought, the accolades he has achieved, and there's nothing that you can really say to go against Triple H not deserving of this spot. And despite what some people may say that he's putting himself in the Hall of Fame, as he said at the post-conference after the Royal Rumble, this was not his decision. It was something that was done by Nick Khan, and it was then announced by his friends Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, which I thought was a great little video that we saw. His face was just completely taken back by what was going on, which overall was an awesome, wholesome video as well. So from myself, Travis, and TNT to Paul Triple H Levesque, congratulations on the 2025 Hall of Fame induction. I can't wait to see you actually go into the Hall of Fame at WrestleMania weekend, and I think we can kind of guess who's going to be the one to do that. Because if it's anybody other than Shawn Michaels, what are we doing here, guys? Like, seriously. Then, moving over to some Vince McMahon lawsuit news, it has officially been notified that Brock Lesnar is now named in the Janelle Grant lawsuit. It was speculated when it was first leaked on the court documents, talking about how when she was hired or when a superstar's contract was coming up for renewal, Vince McMahon used her as essentially a gift and asked her to provide dirty pictures along with some explicit content of what she would do with Lesnar if he wanted to as part of his contract negotiations. And yeah, it kind of sucks, but in the same way, this is something that I want everybody to keep in mind as well. I understand that people want to say what Vince McMahon did was absolutely terrible, and I know people have talked about it being like human trafficking. First off, it is not. This was something that ended up being consensual between two adults, and as I have stated before, and I will state it once more, we would not be hearing about this case or this incident at all if Vince McMahon would have paid Janelle Grant exactly the amount he told her she would receive under the NDA clause, which we know that is why we are here right now. The fact that that amount was not paid in full is why she went through with the lawsuit and why we are where we are now. It's had its great benefits. Of course, some people will say that Brock Lesnar is part of being that deplorable human being. And while their actions in regards to what they were talking about wanting to do is foul, absolutely, morally it's wrong. But when it comes to legal, I don't know if you're going to have a strong case to hold against Brock Lesnar, nor Vince McMahon for that matter. But that's been something that I've talked about before on this show, just from a personal perspective as well as a legality standpoint. I don't know if we're going to see really a whole lot of legal things take place that some people are thinking he's going to be charged with, or thinking that he could potentially serve time or some kind of sentence for. I just don't think it's what people are expecting, nor will they be happy once this is all wrapped up, said and done. But let's go ahead and move over to the in-ring stuff, and we're going to talk about AEW because the Royal Rumble, again, was the focal point for this week, so we're going to get AEW out of the way. And I'm sorry to say, but AEW Dynamite this week just felt very just blah. It was just there, and I admittedly watched it because it's just part of my Wednesday routine. And there wasn't really a whole lot that piqued my interest. I understand that they're trying to build a MJF Jeff Jarrett feud, and now it looks like they're also going to try to segue into MJF and Hangman Page, which that's a little bit better in some people's eyes than Jarrett and MJF, which I actually don't have a problem with the whole Jeff Jarrett going for his final world title story. What I had a problem with in this case is him taking on Claudio Castagnoli and then having the other members of the Death Riders get involved, because I thought these guys were supposed to be the badasses that didn't need help. They can take care of their own problems without interference from one member of the Death Riders. And why do you need help against Jeff Jarrett, who logistically is in his 50s, taking on a man who's, yes, probably in his late 30s, early 40s, but is one of the most chiseled and still very physically fit, active wrestlers today, and you are going to tell me he can't beat Jeff Jarrett on his own? Yeah, that's where you've kind of unsold me on that whole match. And sure enough, Claudio picks up the win because of the outside interference. It's very confusing. It really is, just in an overall sense. The Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega situation with the Don Callis family continued, where they took out Omega backstage before Brian Cage and Will Ospreay's match. While Ospreay would have picked up the win, there was a beatdown that ensued afterwards, and man, it's just really hard for me to think of anything that was positive out of this show. Even the main event wasn't really anything spectacular. In-ring wise, yes, great work overall, not going to disparage that. But Mercedes Moné is still just not clicking, for at least for me. I can't say for everybody because I'm not everybody, and I'm not telling anybody what to think or that my opinion's right and your opinion's wrong. Again, this is just my podcast where I give my opinion, and then I want discourse. I do want people to tell me why they do agree or disagree with me. And in this case, I don't know. I feel like they're forcing Mercedes at this point. They've got all these championships on her. She's defended the TBS title. She's having different women from all over the world come and face her for her championships. I don't really see where this has been overall beneficial. It's just, I don't see it. I could be wrong, and this could be helping immensely, and it's just something that we don't see physically. But I don't know. Mercedes just is not hitting the same way as she did when she was Sasha Banks. I'm not trying to say that Sasha was a better gimmick than Mercedes. It's pretty much the same thing, just a slight little change of nuances to the character. I think they're pushing her a little too hard. And this is one of those things when you have a character who has creative control over what they do, which reportedly is what they say Mercedes is part of her contract, then I think this is where you run into these issues. And honestly, I just think that they need to find something new for her. They need to kind of right this ship if there is still a way to do it. But I don't know. Time will tell how that ends up. But Let's go ahead and move away from AEW. I have not watched Collision. I know that they tried to put on a Collision show that made people's interest peak over the Royal Rumble, which did not happen. Megan Bayne did make her Collision debut, and then it was announced today that she is officially signed with AEW. So congrats to Mega Sis Megan Bayne. And the main event was a like a street fight of sorts with FTR and the Death Riders, I believe, which overall, I'm still like, you really thought this was going to give people an interest to tune in over WWE's Royal Rumble? Yeah, it just wasn't going to happen. Wasn't going to happen no matter really what you put on there. So, but again, we're going to move from AEW and get into WWE. And normally we would go through the week in review and talk about what went on Raw and NXT and SmackDown. And with the exception of NXT, obviously building towards the Vengeance Day PLE, there were a few nuances of like, oh, okay, could this person show up in the Rumble? Will this person potentially have a spot in the Royal Rumble? Raw and SmackDown, though, was basically just we are getting on the road and finishing this to Royal Rumble, which starts our WrestleMania season. And that's pretty much what both shows were. It was just that final build, that final stretch on the road to the Rumble to start WrestleMania's road season. And, you know, we get to the Rumble, and I have to say, I was pretty stoked for it. I understand that people, again, as we've seen the criticism, don't like the smaller match cards of like 5 match cards or maybe even 4 or sometimes 6 at the most. People aren't down with that. I personally think it's a great number. I don't mind small cards, especially when you've got great athletes that can hold up to having that small card. And I think Royal Rumble was a perfect way to do that. You had 4 matches altogether, 2 Rumble matches, which you knew were going to at least last an hour for both, and they did. And then you had the 2 championship matches, the WWE Tag Title match with the Motor City Machine Guns and DIY, where DIY retained their tag titles with a little bit of assistance from the Street Profits. Again, I can't express how happy I am that they are reigniting the tag team scene very well over on the SmackDown brand, and it's all been built off the backs of the Motor City Machine Guns and the DIY heel turn. It's been great. I hope they keep on going, and now with the Street Profits back involved, I think it's just a matter of time before we see the Profits wearing championship gold once again. And then in an incredible ladder match between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes that saw some pretty devastating spots, a Fisherman Buster suplex from the middle rope onto a ladder, and then an Alabama slam from the announce table through the ladder for Kevin Owens. Great matchup. Cody Rhodes picking up the win and has achieved his goal of holding both the WWE and the Variated Winged Eagle championships, solidifying his place as the undisputed champion. However, it was reported that there could be some potential injuries that could potentially damage Cody Rhodes for real, and let's hope it's nothing severe that takes him off of the active roster for a time being. Hopefully it's not, if it is some kind of an injury, it's not something that's going to keep him out of WrestleMania, because I know there's a lot of people that are hoping for at least one match at Mania. Myself, I've said I think it'd be great to see Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. Cena has even said that he deserves to have his last title match and that it means more to him after this Royal Rumble match, which we'll discuss here in just a moment. But hopefully everything's okay with Cody and we can continue to have what I believe is a great WWE champion on this road to Las Vegas. Then the 2 Rumble matches. We'll start with the women's. There was a couple of spots that sure could have been better. But overall, I think the women did great for their Royal Rumble. Jordynne Grace showing up and showing out as an official member of the WWE roster was absolutely awesome. The NXT girls did phenomenal as well. Roxanne Perez showing why she has her nickname, The Prodigy, as she hung in great there. Also Lash Legend, who I fully believe is going to be a big deal on the main roster. And then once you get her into a singles format, I think she's going to excel greatly. She just needs a little bit more fine-tuning and a little bit of work, and I promise you she's going to be a big-time star, very similar to what we compare her right now, people think her and Bianca Belair have a lot of similar traits, and I can see that from that athletic standpoint. They most certainly do, and I am here for an eventual Legend versus Belair feud. Should be fun. And then the returns were of aplenty. The first return, I don't want to talk about just yet because I think it's the most exciting in my opinion. We saw a return, though, of Hall of Famer Trish Stratus, who had a great outing. She also looks phenomenal, as she has every other time she's made an appearance on WWE TV since her retirement. A returning Nikki Bella got a huge ovation for her return at the number 30 spot. Welcome back, Miss Bella. But the return that had everybody shocked to the core and excited to see, Little Miss Goddess herself, Alexa Bliss, along with Lily, came back as well to the Royal Rumble. It was a great showing and a great surprise, and it just goes to show that, once again, people like myself who do read dirt sheets, and while I don't always believe everything I read because I think there is some truth in some of their reporting, in this case, it looks like everybody got it wrong. And I've seen since then a lot of dirt sheets cover it, saying that this plan came together very quickly and that originally Shotzi was going to have her number 21 spot, but since the deal with Bliss happened late, they were able to make things happen for her. I don't really care what you want to report. Alls I know is Alexa Bliss is back, and basically it made everybody look like fools. So great outing too on her return. It was awesome to see her. And then the main return of Charlotte Flair. We've seen the promos and vignettes leading up to the Rumble, and she looked great, amazing as always, and she was my pick to win the Women's Royal Rumble. She did just that, and now she has the option, Rhea Ripley or Tiffany Stratton, for WrestleMania and their respective title. I know which match I want. I've seen the other twice now at WrestleMania. I don't need to see it a third time, even though I understand if they go that route, because that's the final match in the trilogy of Mania matches for Ripley and Flair. But I know what I want is Flair versus Stratton. That, I believe, is the money match, and I hope that's the route they end up going for Mania. Then in the Men's Royal Rumble, there really wasn't like a whole lot of surprises, with the exception of one return. That also just goes to show how deep this roster is currently for WWE. They didn't need to rely on a bunch of nostalgia pops or special surprises. They had a stacked roster. In that Rumble, you had a Braun Breaker, Jacob Fatu, Carmelo Hayes, CM Punk, John Cena, Roman Reigns, all these names, Seth Rollins, all of them, including Logan Paul, which people want to dog on him, but I promise you, I still believe it. I think many people have bought into the fact Logan Paul's the real deal. But when you have this much talent on one roster, it is unbelievable what they are able to pull off. We didn't even talk about the fact we also had Drew McIntyre and LA Knight, main event Jey Uso, Big Jim, Jimmy Uso was in there having a great outing as well. All these names, a returning AJ Styles from what looked like to be a severe injury, back from his injury back in October. That's insane. I love the fact that he's back, and he came out to his original music too, which was kind of a head scratcher. I actually didn't mind his newer theme song, so I don't know. But Phenomenal is always going to hit, and it's awesome to see the Phenomenal One back in our WWE screens. There was news that came out stating that Drew McIntyre was upset with his Rumble elimination along with his overall spot, and it looks like feud heading into Mania season will be with Damian Priest, which has been described as a nothing match between Priest and McIntyre for the show of shows. I kind of actually agree for both guys. I don't think that's really a match that people will care too much about, because I don't really see where there's much of a story for either one of them, and what does one or the other have to gain out of it. Apparently, in the Rumble match, McIntyre was upset with the way his elimination had occurred, and apparently there was a star who, today it has come out, was LA Knight, was being pretty selfish about trying to just get himself over as opposed to the match, was the way that these reports have come out. Drew expressed his frustration of that being the case, and it sounded like there was a few other stars that had the same type of thought. I also think of it where isn't your whole goal in WWE when you're a wrestler and one of their stars is to maximize your minutes, let your screen time show through? Because in my opinion, if that's this message that they're still trying to send out there, I don't really see what the problem was with LA Knight trying to get his stuff in, if indeed that is the case and this report is true and this whole situation is what we have heard about. I don't really think that that's necessarily a bad thing that he was trying to do certain things. I get that the whole idea is the matches, the draw factor, but the stars in it also help draw people to watch the Rumble because of the names involved. But we'll see how this plays out. I digress. Let's move back into the finish of the Rumble that saw the final two, John Cena and Jey Uso. And, before I actually talk about that, let's talk about the three men that were eliminated pretty quickly for each other. That being Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, who had an awesome stare down. I love what somebody mentioned on X about their story, is that this is a continuous story that still has so many layers to it. Just pure hatred between these two characters. And Punk eliminating both simultaneously, only for Logan Paul to come up and eliminate Punk shortly thereafter. Seeing Rollins do that stomp to Reigns where it looked like he kind of took a misstep but also added an extra foot to the back of Reigns' skull, it looked absolutely sick. And then for him to later on follow it up with another stomp with face of Roman on the steel steps. Then a fight ensued between Rollins and Punk. It just kind of broke down into mayhem out there. That was a fun little back and forth spot with those three individuals. Now back to the final two being Jey Uso and John Cena. It was really a pick'em of who you thought was going to go with the W on this one. The fans were behind either one of them picking up the win. And looking back at it overall, yeah, I think this was the route to go. Jey Uso's been hot for quite a long time, and John Cena is on this final run that he has promised he's going to give everything to. We saw these two come down to just them as the final two in the Rumble, trading punches back and forth, wound up on the ring apron with both men in danger of hitting the floor and being eliminated. Cena went to deliver the AA, but it was Jey Uso who was able to sneak off the back and do a simple little shove to get Cena off of the apron and both feet hitting the floor, thereby making main event Jey Uso the winner of your 2025 Royal Rumble. And now he will go on to choose either Gunter or Cody Rhodes for a championship opportunity. He had already mentioned in the post-fight press conference that he felt like he still had something to prove against Gunter, so that may be who he ends up choosing. But he may end up choosing Cody Rhodes. Who knows? This is going to be an interesting ride on the road to WrestleMania. I think Jey did deserve it. Also, I think there was a great outing for Penta in this, even though they had the mishap of his feet actually hitting the floor at the beginning of the match during that first opening spot. And they covered it well because as quickly as it happened, I thought both his feet hit, but I couldn't tell for sure, and it looked like one of them was dangling, but as still shots came out earlier today, his foot did indeed touch, so both feet did hit. He should have been eliminated much earlier, but it was quick enough on the camera that it made you left wondering, well, did it? And you weren't going to stop it right then. You were just going to go on with the Rumble. Also, I love the little Rumble tracker down at the bottom that kept the stats, the entrances, who's been eliminated, who's still active, things like that. The time length for each wrestler. I got to say, they said that the time clock was 2 minutes before each person made their entrance. Well, if that's the case, then Liv Morgan hitting an hour in the Rumble when there was still 2 participants left, that pretty much goes to tell me that your clock's either off or you just kayfabe the time, which that's been the long-standing running joke, is that obviously their times are kayfabe when it comes to the Rumble countdown. But that was just a little fun nod that I saw where I'm like, okay, well, the math's not mathing correctly here. But I did love that. I love the official little tracker. I thought it was a lot of fun and an added nuance to the Rumble match to make it feel a very important sports-like match, which it is for the professional professional wrestling world, and it's little touches like that I've enjoyed in this last year or so of making the product feel fresh and different and trying new things. I look forward to seeing what this road to WrestleMania has in store. Jey Uso, who's he going to pick? Charlotte Flair, who's she going to pick? Hopefully we find out sooner rather than later, but now the next stop is the Elimination Chamber in Toronto. Makes you wonder who's going to be the participants. We know Cena's in. Who will the other 5 be to fill those spots? Only time will tell. And guys, I'm going to wrap up this week's episode. Who do you think should be in that Elimination Chamber match with John Cena? And are you happy with the Rumble results? Like some people have expressed they were not. Are you okay though with Jey Uso and Charlotte Flair picking up the wins for their respective Rumbles? And if so, who do you want to see them pick for their championship match? Sound off in those comments below and let's have some discourse and exchange of words. If you like what we did today, as I stated at the beginning of the video, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and following us on all of our social media sites. I will be back, as always, next week to talk more pro wrestling. Until that time, though, ladies and gentlemen, you have a wonderful week ahead, and I hope you continue to love pro wrestling.